San Diego. Time to take your airwaves back from the usual weekend noise with some local sports talk on the Braden Surprenant Show.
With the stars that they have signed under contract, you can't just punt on a Manny Machado prime year.
Sports radio cater to the ones who call America's finest city home.
Braden totally knows his stuff. He's ready for the next step. That guy is good.
The Braden Surprenant Show starts now.
But I think Braden is one of the up-and-coming young stars in the media game in San Diego.
Here's your host, Braden Surprenant.
What's up, San Diego? How you doing on a Saturday morning? Again, a little bit of a change with the Braden Surprenant Show coming up today. Instead of tomorrow, we got tons of Super Bowl coverage coming up tomorrow on 97.3 The Fan. So I'm on Saturday. Today, I'm going to be taking you for the next couple of hours, little weekend programming here on 97.3 The Fan. Going to talk a lot of Aztec basketball after last night. We're going to get into some Padres rumors with the Boston Red Sox. We're going to get into a Super Bowl preview. Didn't mention this yesterday, really at all, but, Antonio Gates got robbed from being a first ballot Hall of Famer. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, too. And I know we're not a Chargers town anymore, but he was a San Diego Charger for the majority of his career. And I think he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. We'll talk about that later on in the show. We'll talk about Rob Manfred making moronic comments yet again, especially taking his jabs at small market teams. And a lot more coming up on the Braden Surprenant Show live on 97.3 The Fan. Hopefully you're having a good morning. It's a beautiful morning here in San Diego, California. A lot better than the week we've had with a lot of rain and downpours. And now everything's kind of mush outside. But that being said, it's great that over the weekend, it should be a lot sunnier for you to enjoy your Super Bowl weekend. Let's dive into San Diego State basketball. San Diego State basketball last night, tough loss against Nevada, 70-66 in overtime. I watched the first half of the game at my house, and then the second half, I went out to dinner and went to Naughty Barrel over in PQ. Got to watch the game there at the bars. A lot of Aztec fans that were there as well, and a little fun environment, but, a typical tough San Diego State game on the road, especially in the Mountain West Conference. And in a conference that now with Nevada competing for a bid in the NCAA tournament, a conference that could probably see 6 teams make the NCAA tournament. I mean, Nevada had a great week this week. They needed to have this week. They knocked off Utah State earlier in the week on the road in Logan, and then they host San Diego State. They outlast the Aztecs in overtime, and that's 2 big wins for the Nevada Wolfpack that are keeping pace with the rest of the conference here in the Mountain West. I mean, you look at the Mountain West Conference standings, it's ridiculous how tight they are. San Diego State's now a half game back out of first, but going into the game, there was 4 teams tied for first place, and now Nevada is hunting down the pack. It's a fun year for Mountain West basketball, I tell you that. It's a fun year. I mean, it might be a little bit stressful for Aztec fans, but, it goes to say, San Diego State making the national championship last year, did that raise all the ships in the conference? Did that get them to all compete at a high level? I mean, they already had a lot of teams in the NCAA tournament last year. None of them won, but San Diego State. I mean, San Diego State won for every one of them going to the national championship game. But now all of a sudden, the Aztecs are in a conference that is a college basketball conference. Talk about some mid-major conferences that usually do really well in basketball to the point that they even elevate them to a power conference like the Big East. Now, I'm not saying the Mountain West is the Big East. They got a lot of ways to go to be able to be in that category, but it's not a bad little spot to be in if you're San Diego State. Now, I know football drives everything with conferences and money, but if you stay in the Mountain West Conference, and it is a basketball conference, which is your best sport at the school, it's not a bad spot to be in. Let's talk a little bit more about last night. Jaden Ledee's got 20 points, went 4 for 8 from the field, 12 for 14 from the free throw line. And even though those numbers sound pretty good, he didn't have the greatest of games yesterday for the Aztecs. Had some bad shots. Again, 4 for 8 from the field. Those 2 free throws that he missed were earlier in the game. Obviously, he picked it up later in the game. But he needed to play a little bit better, and that was still a good night for Ledee. But they need other players to step up as well for this Aztec team, especially if they're going to have to deal with rowdy environments on the road. 20 points from Ledee, nobody else in double figures but Trammell, and that's the 66 points that they got. They shot 40% from the fields. Okay, it's not great. 15% from the three-point line is not going to get it done in a road conference game in the Mountain West Conference. I mean, it's just not going to get it done. Micah Parrish was 1 for 7 from the three-point line. Waters was 1 for 4. Trammell was 0 for 3. And bad shot selection down the stretch. I mean, that last possession was a terrible shot for San Diego State with the game on the line. They needed to steal one at Nevada. Instead, it's another road loss in conference. And here's the other thing. I mean, it's tough for San Diego State, right? Because not only are you everybody's number one target in the conference, because you've been the flagship of the conference in basketball, for the last decade plus. And it really has. I mean, San Diego State's been the flagship program of the Mountain West Conference when it comes to basketball. They've been the most consistent team. They've been the team that could go the farthest. And this after BYU left, they really took over, especially since UNLV can never figure it out. New Mexico's had good years here and there, and you've seen Boise State have good years and Colorado State have good years, but a lot of those teams have also had bad years. San Diego State hasn't had too many bad years after Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher took everything over. But you're going to get everybody's best shot. I've talked about that ad nauseum before, especially after making a national championship a year ago. And you're also, based on your non-conference schedule, that was very tough for a lot of different teams. A lot of teams would not be able to handle the schedule that San Diego State put together for the non-con. And what your net ranking is, and as a quad one team, you are everybody's best chance to get a resume builder before March. And unfortunately for the Aztecs, the way the schedule is played out, every road game that they have had in conference play, especially on the weekend, and even though it was a Friday night, which is a tough turnaround for San Diego State off of a Tuesday game, to then have to, on the road, by the way, and then had to go to Reno on a Friday on a quick turnaround. But they're playing the Wolfpack at the time. Nevada is one of those bubble teams that really needs a win, and if they lose, they're probably going to be out of the NCAA tournament. At least this keeps their hopes alive. Where have we heard that before? The same thing when Colorado State hosted San Diego State. On the bubble, didn't know if they were going to make the NCAA tournament, needed a big win at home against the best team in the conference, and they beat them. It's a win-or-go-home situation for the opponent. It hasn't been for San Diego State. Same thing for Boise State. San Diego State plays Boise State on national televisions, on big CBS. It's on the road, hostile environment. Boise State really needs a win. And they give San Diego State everything they got, and the Aztecs lose. There's a couple of things with home court advantage in college basketball, which is obviously the biggest advantage in all of sports. And I'll get to that in a second, because these schools show up to Viejas to get their ass kicked. I mean, there's nothing like playing San Diego State at Viejas Arena. Even in down years for San Diego State, which are still good years, but not dominant years, it's an almost impossible place to play because of the stadium, because of the arena, because of the fan base, because of the students. But for San Diego State, as they try to keep pace, and at least they're still keeping pace for a potential regular season conference title. And if you look at their schedule moving forward, they do have a lot of the teams that they have already lost to on the road come to Viejas, where they can avenge those losses and stay pace with the top. They're really a half game out of first right now. But what this is doing for them is it's teaching them how to win and at least see what the competition's going to be like when you get to March and the team you're playing has their back against the wall. The problem is for San Diego State is they haven't played like that yet because their back hasn't been against the wall. They haven't been in a situation where they have had to win, a must win on the road. They've had some, I mean, I would say this Nevada game was a chance for them. Like they should have won this game. They're still in the category of they should win these games. They should probably win these games if they want to stay around the same seed that they got right now, according to Joe Lunardi. But they haven't been must-wins yet. There really is no threat for San Diego State to not make the NCAA tournament unless they really collapse, which I don't think they're going to do because I don't think anybody's going to beat them at home. And they got some big dudes. They got some big teams coming to Viejas. They got Boise State still coming to Viejas. New Mexico's coming to Viejas. Colorado State's coming to Viejas. But they should be able to win all those games because of the home court advantage. That plays a major factor in college basketball, especially with officiating. I thought the officiating last night wasn't very good. I'm never a fan of officials that call a lot of fouls. I mean, the Aztecs had 27 fouls, and Nevada had 25 fouls, and I'm pretty sure Ben Higgins put out that there were 30 fouls in the first half, or whistles, or something like that. It's something ridiculous. I've done enough college basketball games now from a play-by-play and a color perspective that you don't need to be calling that many fouls. Let's keep the game. Let's keep it moving. But then the inconsistencies down the stretch, all of a sudden, when CBS kept showing the graphic of who was in foul trouble, and it was both, but everybody on both teams was on it. It was like both full rosters had at least 3 fouls each. This was before overtime. I mean, go through the box score. The starters for the Wolfpack last night, 4 fouls, 3 fouls, 5 fouls, 4 fouls, 4 fouls. Their bench 2, 2, 1, and 0, but the only guy that didn't have a foul played 4 minutes. 25 fouls. Look at San Diego State. Ledee, 4 fouls. Parrish, 3 fouls. Waters, 3 fouls. Butler fouled out. Hyde, 3 fouls. J. Powell, who came off the bench last night, 4 fouls. For J. Powell, 3 points. That's another reason that the Aztecs probably lost. I mean, 24 minutes for J. Powell. Just came off a huge game at Viejas Arena. Only 1 for 2 from the field. Free throws was 1 for 1. Got into foul trouble. Had 4 fouls. Only ended the night with 3 points. Not a good night for J. Powell, who has been a huge asset for this Aztecs basketball team. Too many fouls last night. I mean, for both teams. Nobody wants to watch that anyway. And then down the stretch, there was a couple times where Ledee got mugged and there was just no call. So you can say what you want about officiating. That's the 10 points that you start off with in a deficit on the road. That's just what it's going to be. And we'll see how San Diego State bounces back in their next game. Because their schedule, it doesn't necessarily lighten up. But that being said, they now get a 2-game stretch, which turns into a tough 3-game stretch. But at least at home, they got Colorado State coming up on Tuesday. Then they got New Mexico a week from today, which is going to be a hell of a game on Fox Sports 1. That's going to be just like we advertised on the Fan with Utah State. That's going to be a must-attend game for any of you Aztec fans out there, or anybody that wants to support San Diego State basketball. You better start looking for tickets now. And if you haven't been already, you might be out of luck because that game's going to be nuts. But the Aztecs have to win those games. And then they go to Logan to take on Utah State. That's going to be a problem. That's a tough venue to play at. That is a very tough venue to play at. And Nevada just went there and won. So maybe the Aztecs can go up there and handle business. But Utah State's going to be ready for them, especially after how San Diego State welcomed Utah State to San Diego last week. Then they got Fresno State, San Jose State, UNLV. Those are 3 games that are just take care of business, and you should be able to win. And then you finish the season at home against Boise State. Again, you're a half game out of first place. Not a time to panic. Tough loss last night. Some people said it was an embarrassing loss. I don't know if it was embarrassing. You know, Nevada has won some good games this year. They have lost some bad games, but they've won some good games. They had the same record. It's not like Nevada's a slouch. I mean, Lunardi has them as a bubble team in the NCAA tournament. I mean, they're one of the first 4 out, which they're probably going to be in when Joe Lunardi puts out his next bracket on Tuesday. So I wouldn't say it was an embarrassing loss. I mean, it's a tough loss. That's a tough one as well. They're more talented than Nevada. They should be able to go up to Nevada and get a victory. But unfortunately, just didn't go that way. You got to flush it. Got to be ready for the next one. Got a lot to talk about today on the show. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I'm going to get to your chats on YouTube. I'll read some of them. I know a lot of you were commenting about the Aztec game, which is great. We'll read some of those. We're going to get to why Antonio Gates was not a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's kind of ridiculous. Didn't get to talk about that during the week. We had so much other things we had to talk about, but I feel like that is an important thing, especially in San Diego. You know, he's one of the last San Diego Chargers to potentially be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is ridiculous. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these writers and stuff want to make sure that, you know, Gronkowski is a first ballot Hall of Famer and all this other BS. But the reality is Antonio Gates he was the really, right after Tony Gonzalez, one of the guys that just changed the position of the tight end spot in the National Football League and in football in general. You know, Tony Gonzalez really paved the way. Antonio Gates carried it, and then it started branching out in a lot of different tight ends. One of my friends told me one time, if you're telling the story about tight ends in the NFL, can you tell the story without Antonio Gates? The answer is no, which means he's a Hall of Famer. He's probably going to get inducted again. The fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is sickening to me. I think it's a joke. We're going to talk more about that later on in the show. We're going to get into some Padres talk. Where are they at with this trade with the Red Sox? The rumors that they're interested in Jarren Duran and maybe Kenley Jansen. Why Kenley Jansen? Why Kenley Jansen? Don't they have enough bullpen arms? I know you can never have enough pitching. They setting up for another trade. They got resources that now that they're acquiring for the bullpen help to maybe part ways with to improve your starting pitching in your outfield. Why Kenley Jansen? It's interesting to me. I'm going to break that down at 10. We're going to get a deep dive into Super Bowl 58 as well in the second hour. So much to talk about. If you want to join, we'll take your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Also, comment on YouTube. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on all social media platforms at @B_SURP. I put out TikToks almost daily now with takes. I put out stuff on Instagram, my Instagram reels. Again, everything is still the same at BSURP. Got more content on my YouTube page at B_SURP. A lot of you can follow me there, can watch this show there. Streaming live today on Facebook with 97.3 The Fan, YouTube with 97.3 The Fan, 97.3 The Fan's Twitch account, 97.3 The Fan on Twitter. I also have my YouTube page streaming as well as my Instagram and my Twitter account. You can find us pretty much anywhere on the show. Want to hear from the fans as much as possible. When we come back, we're going to talk about what San Diego State lost more in that game yesterday when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Where are they at? Where's the picture looking at? And what's it going to look like after today on another big day of college basketball? I'm Braden Surprenant. This is the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Did you miss anything from your favorite fan talk show? The Odyssey app's chaptering feature allows you to skip any segment you want.
Like I can listen to those guys forever.
On 97.3 The Fan.
Attention all taco lovers. The Craft Taco in Sereno Valley is now open and has the best tacos in San Diego. The Craft Taco is ranked number 23 in the United States on Yelp among all taco shops. Whether it's lunchtime or happy hour, go check out the Craft Taco today.
My 13-year-old acts like a puppy again. Almost overnight, she's a different dog.
Perfect poops.
When people switch their dog's food to the farmer's dog, the effects can seem like magic. But there's no magic involved. It's simply real meat and vegetables with all the nutrients dogs need, instead of highly processed pellets. No tricks, just smarter, healthier pet food delivered in packs portioned for your dog. It's amazing what real food can do. Get 50% off your first order at thefarmersdog.com/no-magic.
Get a large hot coffee for only $1 when you buy any breakfast sandwich at 7-Eleven with 7 rewards, including the delicious bacon, egg, and cheese croissant. Croissant? Croissant? Croissant. Croissant?
Valid through 2/20/24 plus tax. Participating stores only. See app for details.
All right, fellow Padres fans, follow your San Diego Padres as they head to sunny Peoria, Arizona for another great year of spring training baseball. The 2024 baseball season is on deck at the Peoria Sports Complex, where you can see all your favorite Padres players up close. Slide into fun in Peoria with cold drinks, great food, and the best seats in baseball. It's family fun for fans of all ages. Get your tickets at peoriabaseball.com. See you in Peoria.
Kelly Blue Book is the one-stop shop for pricing, fixing, selling, and instant cash offering. Instant cash offer is exactly what it sounds like. An official offer to buy or trade your car. Woo-hoo! Just enter your VIN or license plate, answer a few questions about your car's history, and what kind of condition it's in. In minutes, you'll receive an offer to sell or trade your car that you can be sure is fair. Then choose a dealer to purchase your car and schedule a time to meet. For all of the its, KBB.com.
Can't sleep with this cold.
Honey.
Honey?
Honey, you need NyQuil Severe Honey.
NyQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a dreamy honey taste.
Feeling better, honey? Honey? I'll take that as a yes.
Try NyQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu symptom relief. NyQuil Severe with honey flavor. The nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, fever. Honeylicious, best sleep with a cold. Medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Hi, my name's Tim Forehand. I'm a deputy sheriff. In my job, keeping in shape is important. I've tried other products to get my weight down, but nothing has worked like Android 400. In just 3 months, I've dropped 51 pounds, down from 230 to 179. Plus, the weight's come off in the stomach area. I've gone from a snug 36-inch waist to a 32-inch waist, which I was in high school. I highly recommend the Android 400 to all my friends.
Guys, are you frustrated because no matter how hard you try, it seems impossible to lose stubborn belly fat? Then discover why thousands of men each month rely on Andro 400. Lose belly fat, gain energy and confidence, and feel great about yourself. Andro 400, the safe, effective, and inexpensive way to boost your testosterone. Go to andro400.com or call 888-400-0433.
Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live on 97.3 The Fan, San Diego's #1 sports station. We are broadcasting live all over the place. Not only can you listen on the Odyssey app, you can watch us on a lot of different accounts, according to what I got in front of me. But YouTube, 97.3 The Fan. My YouTube at B_SURP or at Braden Surprenant. We're on Twitch right now on 97.3 The Fan. Never really streamed on Twitch before, but here we are. So thanks for the two that are on Twitch right now. I think one of them's EC Money. Saw you earlier. Dude, what's up? There you are. On 97.3 The Fan's Facebook account, on Twitter. We're also on my own Twitter account and Instagram, trying to try a couple of things out there. So, and I think I got it working again. The Instagram one went down. But you can follow me on social media at B_SURP, at BSURP on all social media accounts. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. I really don't accept too many Facebook friends unless I know who you are. TikTok, putting out a lot of takes on TikTok right now, trying to grow that. And then, of course, on YouTube. And then all of our stuff is live on YouTube as well, from the morning show through the midday show, through the afternoon, the Matt's Gravy show, and so on and so forth. So thanks again for making us a part of your day. Little weekend sports talk for you on a Saturday. We talked about the Aztecs basketball game last night, lost 70-66 to the Nevada Wolfpack. And Joe Lenardi puts out his bracketology all the time. Tuesdays and Fridays is usually what it comes out. I'm a sick sports fan, so I'm always immediately, as soon as it comes out, I'm tuned in. I always got to check where San Diego State's at. I got to check where my Horned Frogs are at as well, all the time. I am disgruntled with Joe Lenardi and his take on the Horned Frogs in terms of what their seed would be. They got a big game coming up at 11 against Iowa State, and a big day of college basketball today throughout the country. And then, of course, and check some of the other schools. My sister's school, High Point University, which is in High Point, North Carolina, has only one loss in conference, but they actually lost this week to UNC Asheville. They play in the Big South. They've never made the NCAA tournament, and they got a good opportunity to do so. And I keep telling my sister, I said, if they make the NCAA tournament, we have to go, because who knows when they're going to do it ever again. And they're having a great year. So I've been watching where High Point's labeled at as well. But let's talk about the Aztecs. Let's see where they're at. Going into last night, they were expected to be a 5 seed in the South region, which is going to Dallas, Texas for a Sweet 16 appearance. My thing on seeding for the NCAA tournament, obviously you just got to get in the tournament and anything can happen. But once you get in the tournament, I don't care about seeds. I care about locations. How far do these teams have to travel? If you're San Diego State, you don't want to open up the NCAA tournament in Charlotte, North Carolina. You want to open it up in Spokane, or you want to open it up in Salt Lake City. Those are the cities that are close to you. You especially don't want to ever start in Dayton, Ohio for the first 4, but that's not going to be the case for San Diego State. Host sites this year: Brooklyn, Spokane, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Omaha, Charlotte, Memphis, and that's it. Salt Lake. So for me, if I'm an Aztec fan, I want to go to Spokane. I want to go to Salt Lake. I can survive with like maybe Omaha, maybe Memphis, I guess. But you want to be in one of those couple of places before the tournament is filled. And then once you get in one of those locations, which is a lot easier when you're a team like San Diego State, you're going to get a 5 seed, maybe a 6. You're going to be one of the better teams in your group. That's why it's important. The 5 seed over a 6 seed is a huge, huge deal. You get a 4, it's not much more of an advantage, but a 5-4 is not too bad for San Diego State. I don't think they're going to get a 4. I think they're probably going to get a 5 or a 6. If they really get hosed, they'd get a 7. So let's talk about the Aztecs again. According to Joe Lenardi, they're going to be in Spokane playing UC Irvine, the representation of the Big West Conference. They already played them, though, so I don't really know if they're going to seed them like that. They already played them this season. I know somebody personally that would love to have that matchup. But that's good. That's a tough 12 seed to deal with. Then you got Dayton, who you're paired with as a 4, Louisiana Tech the 13. But they're in the Dallas Regional for Sweet 16. That's not the worst. That's second best option behind LA. So if you're the Aztecs and you're an Aztec fan, you want to be in the West region or the South region, so you don't have to go to Boston, Massachusetts, or Detroit, Michigan for a Sweet 16 appearance. Ideally, the West. I would rather be a 6 or a 7 seed in the West than a 4 or 5 seed in Dallas, which is not even that bad of a trip anymore. I definitely don't want to be any type of seed in Boston or Detroit. But that's kind of how it's weighing out right now for San Diego State. Bubble teams right now, which is very interesting. Nevada is probably going to be in the latest bracketology. They just knocked off the Aztecs. They knocked off Utah State this week, too. I mean, they kicked some ass this week when they needed to. Their first 4 out. They're probably going to be a last 4 in. And when you look at the conference overall breakdown, we talked about it. We got people commenting on it. It's got to be one of the best. Mountain West has got to be one of the toughest out there this year. They are. They're one of the top conferences in college basketball. Night in and night out. It's difficult to win in the Mountain West Conference. I'd put your thing up there, gas station, but you continue to have other parts to your name. Anyway, the conferences right now that are really, the best are the Big 12 conference, which to me is, you want to watch a Big 12 you watch a Big 12 basketball game, you're going to be highly entertained. No matter what the matchup is. Every night is just a gauntlet. Obviously, I'm biased because my school is in that conference, the school that I attended. But they got some awesome games today. Awesome games today in the Big 12 conference. Baylor's taking on Kansas, which is going to be a night game. Or actually a late afternoon game. It's a 3 o'clock game. 13th ranked Baylor at the 4th ranked Kansas Jayhawks. Jayhawks by 6.5 from Allen Fieldhouse on ESPN. That game's going to be badass. Other games in the Big 12. TCU at Iowa State. Going to be awesome. That game tips off right when we end this show at 11. Houston going to Cincinnati. Cincinnati has an opportunity to knock off the number 5 team in the country and get themselves in the NCAA tournament bid and maybe give the Big 12 10 teams in the NCAA tournament. Outrageous. UCF's playing at Texas Tech. Another big ranked matchup. Kansas State at BYU. There's some great basketball games in the Big 12. But you know who else has good basketball games? The Mountain West Conference, as we mentioned. Boise State at Utah State. Aztecs fans better be glued to that game later tonight at 7 o'clock. UNLV at New Mexico is a good one. Some great games throughout the country. And I have to say this. Do you know what day it is? Does everybody know what day it is? Nationally, it's a national holiday today. Do you know what day it is? I got to give a shout out to my buddy Nick Filio. Today is Marquette Day in the country. It's National Marquette Day. I didn't even know it was a thing until my friends that went to Marquette started talking about Marquette Day. Today is Marquette Day. I don't know how you guys are celebrating Marquette Day, but if you want to celebrate Marquette Day, they host St. John's at 3 o'clock. That's going to be an insane environment for college basketball today. You got so many great college basketball games. Back to the bubble watch, back to the conference breakdown. Big 12 expected to get 10 teams, SEC 9, Big 10 6, Mountain West 5, which might be 6. I said it last week when it came to the conference breakdown with the Mountain West. I said, Mountain West fans, specifically Aztec fans, could you imagine a situation where you got more bids to the NCAA tournament than the Pac-12 and the ACC combined? That is still a possibility. Right now with the Mountain West probably getting 6 in with Nevada beating San Diego State last night. ACC's got 4, Pac-12 now with 3 because Washington State sneaking in. It's like it's right there on the cusp. But to have the conference have the third most teams, tied for the third most teams potentially in the NCAA tournament, is pretty impressive. Pretty good spot to be in if you're the San Diego State Aztecs. We're going to keep it going on local sports talk. We're going to talk about Antonio Gates when we come back. I know the national media people were talking about, the PEDs for Antonio Gates. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm going to tell you why when we come back. Then we're going to talk into Padres situation. When are they going to make this trade with the Red Sox? Why are they interested in Kenley Jansen? Is it leading for something bigger? Is AJ Preller about to make a bunch of massive trades with pitchers and catchers starting tomorrow? That's coming up in just a little bit. But when we come back, why was Antonio Gates left out of the Pro Football Hall of Fame on the first ballot? We're going to talk about that when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
It's on
Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Carrying you on a Saturday morning. Good morning to everybody in America's finest city. Thanks again for tuning in on multiple platforms. The traditional way, on the radio, on the Odyssey app, on YouTube, which I see all your comments. I'm trying to keep up with them as much as possible. It's very difficult to do. When I'm doing it with Andy and Elston, it's good because, like, there's times where Andy and Elston can talk, right? Because I'm producing the show and I can go through and kind of read some of the comments. And now I got to do it during the break. Thanks to all of you that are tuning in on YouTube and, Instagram. A lot of people on Instagram as well. But we are live on 97.3 The Fan. We are live on the Odyssey app. We are live on 97.3 The Fan's YouTube page. Be sure to like and subscribe. All of you watching on YouTube, stop right now, like, subscribe to this. You can also see all of my content on my YouTube page as well, at @B_SURP. Live on 97.3 The Fan's Facebook. We're live on Twitch. I know my guy EC Money tuned in on Twitch. I haven't really been on Twitch too much, but we got a new Twitch account, 97.3 The Fan. So if you're big on Twitch, be sure to follow us on that. We're live on Twitter at 97.3 The Fan. I know a couple of you are watching on Twitter. We're live on my Twitter account at @B_SURP. Live on my Instagram account at @B_SURP. Thanks again to all of you for joining on Instagram. Really appreciate that. And you can follow me on all social media platforms at @B_SURP. B-SURPs for everything. If you don't find B-SURP on a social media platform, I'm probably not on it yet. But I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. Facebook's just my name, obviously. LinkedIn's my name. I don't know why you would want to follow me on that unless you want to make a connection. I guess that's the thing for LinkedIn. And then also, you can hear all of us and all of the show in podcast form. The Braden Surprenant Show. If you're a Spotify person, it's on Spotify. Type in the Braden Surprenant Show, click subscribe. Subscribe to me on Spotify. Subscribe to me on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're on it. The Braden Surprenant Show. So if you want to go back and listen, don't necessarily want to watch, which is fine. Totally understand. Don't want to look at my face. That's cool. It's a little insulting, but I get it. You can listen in podcast form as well. We're everywhere. And we're trying to grow this thing as much as we can. So give me the follow, hit like, hit subscribe, all the usual social media things that you got to do. And we appreciate you guys joining us on the weekends. Again, this is my last Saturday show. And then next Sunday, we move into our normal time slot of 8 to 10 each and every Sunday through the rest of the year. It's going to be great for Padres baseball. It's going to be great for college and NFL football. And high school football. I'll get you some high school takes on there as well. But Sundays from 8 to 10 is the normal time for the show. Today's the last Saturday show. Tomorrow, obviously, with the Super Bowl and a lot of things going on with that. We got some pregame shows we got to run. Totally understandable. But we'll be live and local every Sunday from 8 to 10. And we'll see what happens about Saturdays in the future. I do have to take a day off every once in a while. I wanted to talk about Antonio Gates. And I'm going to play some highlights in the background of Antonio Gates because the guy should be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's not even close. It's not even close. And you could talk about the limited PEDs or whatever, but if you just look at what he accomplished in his time as a San Diego Charger, I know he was up in LA for a year, but as a San Diego Charger, the guy was unbelievable. I mean, he was obviously part of my childhood growing up watching Chargers football as a San Diego Charger fan. Again, no longer a fan because they moved to Los Angeles. But it was really cool to watch him play and how he elevated the tight end position and really picked up where Tony Gonzalez let off. Tony Gonzalez really changed the game for the tight end position in the National Football League. And Antonio Gates carried the torch. I mean, there's been some great tight ends in the history of the National Football League that are in the Hall of Fame. Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp, Kellen Winslow. Ozzie Newsome, Mike Ditka. But a lot of those guys fail in comparison to a guy like Antonio Gates. If you go on Pro Football Reference, Antonio Gates has the 4th highest Hall of Fame number. Tony Gonzalez is number 1, and then Rob Gronkowski, who just recently retired, is not eligible for the Hall of Fame yet, is number 2, followed by Travis Kelce and Antonio Gates. The guy should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I know he didn't win a Super Bowl, but you know who else didn't win a Super Bowl? Tony Gonzalez. Guy never won a Super Bowl. If you start breaking down his stats and you start looking at it, how it compares, he's top 5 in almost every statistical category for a tight end. Receptions, he's 3rd all time at 955. Gonzalez has the number 1 spot, then Jason Witten, then it's Antonio Gates. If you look at yards, it's Tony Gonzalez, Jason Witten, Antonio Gates. If you look at touchdowns, Antonio Gates has the most touchdowns in the National Football League all time for tight ends at 116 touchdowns. He's even got one of the longest touchdowns, 72 yards. No, not really. I mean, there's a lot of longer ones, but he's top 5 in almost every statistical category. He's 4th all time in games played in the NFL. He missed a significant amount of time with his turf toe that he had. But the fact that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer is so ridiculous to me. It is such a joke. This is why I'm anti-Hall of Fame. I'm anti-Hall of Fame all the time because of things like this. I'm showing ads right now. I'm trying to fix that problem. You got the highlights. It is what it is. I'm not a big fan of the Hall of Fame because of some things that, some biases that are used in how to get into the Hall of Fame. Here's what Antonio Gates had to say about not being in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot. And again, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, but the reasoning that some of these entities give, I think, is such crap. And again, this is why I don't like Hall of Fames. I don't care. I don't care about them. But Antonio Gates not being in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot is absurd. Absolutely absurd. I get the PED use, right? I get that he didn't win a championship. Tony Gonzalez never won a Super Bowl either. That is such a terrible argument, by the way. Well, he didn't win a Super Bowl. Well, you know how hard it is to win a Super Bowl? You know how much in football it's about like the team, not necessarily the individual player. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. Let's not talk about Dan Fouts being an all-time quarterback because he never won a Super Bowl. Same thing with Phillip Rivers. Well, guess what? There's more than just being a quarterback to a football team. It takes a lot to win a Super Bowl. It takes a lot to win a championship. There's a lot of things that have to go right for teams to be able to do it. And some teams have been fortunate enough to go on runs where they can win multiple in a year or multiple during a dynasty type run. But here's what Antonio Gates had to say about not being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I feel like I let the people who went through the journey with me down, like your family, the people who understands what's beneath the surface, all the work you put in, the coaching staffs, the players who you played with. They're like, what? So I think that's one of those things where you're like, man, in due time, we'll get there, man. Did a great job in really shaping what the tight end position is. Again, picking up what Tony Gonzalez did and then carrying it and creating what the tight ends are today. Creating that opportunity for guys like Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski, George Kittle. I mean, you start going down the list of all these tight ends that could do both things. I mean, Antonio Gates was not just a reception tight end. The guy could block in the run game. He's could do a lot of different things in the NFL. And again with Hall of Fames, if you can't tell the story of the position that he played. So tight end, if you cannot tell the story of a tight end in the National Football League without mentioning Antonio Gates' name, he's a Hall of Famer. And to just keep him out on the first ballot is utterly ridiculous. It makes no sense. Antonio Gates finished his career, played from 2003 to 2018. He was an 8-time Pro Bowler. He started for 12 of those seasons. He was a first-team All-Pro selection 3 times. Played in 236 games, started 190 of them, had 955 receptions for 11,841 yards with a all-time record of 116 touchdowns for a tight end. His longest was 72. He'll get in there. I know he'll get in. It's unfortunate that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's really disheartening. And that's why I don't like the games that are played with Hall of Fames. I mean, like Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. You can argue that as much as you want. I'm not a big believer in Kurt Warner being a Hall of Fame quarterback. I think a lot of this now, which is kind of ridiculous, is how much media time you get. And if you're in the media and you're in the presence of the media, all of a sudden you get moved to the front of the line for the Hall of Fame because of the writers that vote in different outlets, and you see it in all walks of sports. And to me, that's where it just starts getting it gets to a point for me where I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? I like the historic significance of the Hall of Fame for all sports. I love the history in the museum and everything about telling the story of the sport of everybody that came before, what you currently watch, right? And as a sports fan, that's cool and that's fun. So I'm not against going to visit the Hall of Fame. I think the process really sucks. I don't necessarily think media members should be able to dictate who's in the Hall of Fame and who's not. I agree. Eric Bessel, Phillip should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He probably won't either. I mean, they'll use the Super Bowls against Phillip. But, look about how long 619 Bengals fan is 100% right on Twitter. How long has Eric Allen been left out until he finally got in? I mean, he should have been way, way before. We've talked with Clark Judge multiple times on these shows. And he gets it. I mean, he knows he's been in those meetings. He's got to pick. But it's just, I don't know. I don't like the process. Maybe that's the thing when you get older, like you're super into the Hall of Fame. I'm not. I know people that love talking Hall of Fame. I don't. But I do get disgruntled when I think guys that deserve it should be in, especially as a first ballot guy. You always feel jabbed again because he played in San Diego, right? I mean, if he played for the Dallas Cowboys, would he be in? I guess not. I mean, Jason Witten's not in, but Antonio Gates was better than Jason Witten in a lot of different categories. The only thing Witten's got Gates in is games played and games started. And a couple more, and obviously some more receptions because he played a little bit longer in the National Football League. But I would take Gates over Witten. But Witten's another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's not yet. He's got very, very similar stats to Antonio Gates. No, Dallas Clark is not in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame snubs are like all-star snubs. I get it. I mean, it's irritating. It is what it is. But I wanted to say that he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll get in. It won't be a first ballot. You'll see Gronkowski and Kelsey will be first ballot Hall of Famers 100%. Media darlings. Antonio Gates wasn't. I mean, how many times did you used to see Antonio Gates in commercials? I'd only see him a couple times. Guy kept to himself. He's a nice dude. But that's where I start going, okay, enough with the media darlings that need to be in earlier before everybody else. But that's my take on Antonio Gates. San Diego Padres in the news this week. We've been talking about ad nauseum how they're not doing anything. There's a rumor that they're interested in Jarren Duran and Kenley Jansen. Jarren Duran's one thing. The interest in Kenley Jansen is intriguing to me for a lot of different reasons, which makes me feel like AJ Preller's up to something. I'm going to tell you why the significance of Kenley Jansen is more important than Jarren Duran when we come back. Second hour, Braden Surprenant Show, 97.3 The Fan, San Diego's #1 sports station, live and local on the weekend. Under contract. You can't just punt on a Manny Machado prime.
Sports radio cater to the ones who call America's finest city home.
Braden totally knows his stuff. He's ready for the next step. That guy is good.
The Braden Surprenant Show starts now.
But I think Braden's one of the up-and-coming young stars in the media game in San Diego.
Here's your host, Braden Surprenant.
Get fired up on a Saturday. We got the Super Bowl coming up tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl coming up in just a little bit. We will dive into some Padres talk now. If you want to join the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. You could also chime in on social media. Follow me on all social medias at B_SURP. At BSERP. You can follow me on a lot of different outlets, obviously. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can also follow me on YouTube at BSERP. You can also subscribe to my podcast version of this, which is the Braden Surprenant Show. You can find it where you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, anywhere that podcasts are around. My podcast is on there, the podcast version of this show. So if you missed anything, be sure to download the podcast, subscribe to us on those platforms. It's a big help in help growing our brand, help growing my show. So if you like what you hear, please do me a favor and do that. Like and subscribe on the YouTube page as well. I greatly appreciate all of that. Talked about Antonio Gates not being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that was kind of ridiculous. We talked about San Diego State basketball last night as well. Went through the March Madness, what's at stake for San Diego State, where they're going to be at, kind of the plan, kind of the path before they get ready for the NCAA tournament, but more importantly, the Mountain West Conference tournament. And of course, trying to win the regular season outright to begin with. But I want to talk about some Padre baseball. We are the flagship of the San Diego Padres, obviously. So we get a lot of Padres talk in throughout the week. But I always want to bring Padres talk on the weekend because, again, that's why we do this show on the weekend. To give you that opportunity to listen to local sports talk on the weekends on times that you usually have to listen to the same old national media stuff that doesn't pertain to San Diego. Doesn't impact us too much. I've heard about Super Bowl talk all week, and we're going to talk about it from a San Diego perspective coming up to finish the show. But nobody's talking about Padres baseball right now. And we had some news on Friday. A lot of news on Friday. Rob Manfred was running his mouth. That's a thing. That's always been a thing. I don't know why he continues to talk about small market teams like that, but we'll talk about that in a second. Here's a couple of things about the San Diego Padres. And we'll start with Blake Snell, who's not necessarily a San Diego Padre anymore, but he's a former Padre, and he's still on the open market. Angels are staying in touch on Blake Snell. They like Snell, but team owner Artie Moreno hasn't given the go-ahead yet. This is according to John Heyman in his last piece in the New York Post. The Yankees suggested they were out on Blake Snell once he declined the offer that they gave him, which was a significant offer. But they still have rotation questions, so whether or not they pivot to Jordan Montgomery will remain to be seen, as he's still available on the open market. But the thing that was really interesting for the Padres involves the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox are still fielding offers on star closer Kenley Jansen and others. They have a deep stash of outfield prospects, which has teams asking about Jarren Duran. San Diego Padres need outfielders. They need multiple outfielders. They currently only have one starting outfielder and then a couple other players that I guess they could throw out there. I mean, Jose Azocar is working his ass off. I'd love for him to be like a stud out of nowhere, but there's no guarantees in that. The Padres, seeking left-handed hitting outfielders, are interested in Jarren Duran. And the Padres and Dodgers are among candidates for Kenley Jansen, but San Diego may be more interested in a starter like Hyunjin Ryu. Hyunjin Ryu is a free agent. You can go pick him up if you wanted to. As for Kenley Jansen, he's got 1 year left on his contract. It's 1 year, $16 million. Not necessarily something that the San Diego Padres can afford, per se. We've talked about that. They're trying to stay under the luxury tax. But I'm sure the Red Sox want to get rid of that contract. Jarren Duran, as of right now, is not even in arbitration yet. So he's not going to be making a lot of money. So you could get two for the price of one by acquiring Kenley Jansen. We asked the question yesterday on Andy Nelson, would you rather have Hyun-Jin Ryu or Jarren Duran? If you can only have one. It sounds like the asking price for both is significantly high. Would you part ways with Ha-Seong Kim to get Jarren Duran? That's an intriguing question to me. Would you part ways with Ha-Seong Kim to get Jarren Duran? You have middle infield help. You hang on to your prospects. You got Jackson Merrill coming up the ranks. You got to find a spot for Jake Cronenworth to play. You can't be going into the season with him playing first base, although it seems like that's what they're going to do. And you got tons of control of Jarren Duran. I mean, Jarren Duran is 27 years old. He played at Long Beach State. He's under contract till 2029. Maybe the Red Sox trade for Ha-Seong Kim, sign him to a contract extension. Becomes their everyday starting shortstop. I know they gave Trevor Story a lot of money. He missed all of last year. He's 31 years old. I'd probably do that. I could do that. But the Kenley Jansen thing's intriguing to me. Obviously, the Red Sox are trying to get rid of that contract. Padres are in no place to take on contracts. But that being said, by acquiring Kenley Jansen, can you use some of that bullpen capital to go get a starting pitcher or go get another outfielder? So you make a trade for Jarren Duran and Kenley Jansen, and then do you flip Jansen? Or do you flip one of your bullpen pieces? Do you flip one of your young pitching prospects? Because you have all these bullpen pieces. I mean, you got a ton of guys in your bullpen. I mean, I pulled up the list the other day. You have a ton of bullpen help, which is great for the postseason. But the reality is, you know, bullpen teams don't usually go very far. It's teams with starting pitcher. Let's look at the bullpen. I mean, these are guys that are expected to be in the bullpen. Robert Suarez, Johnny Brito, Tom Cosgrove. You got Wilson, you got De Los Santos, you got Go, you got Matsui. You just picked up Wendy Peralta. That still leaves guys like Groom and Otto and Vasquez and Jacob and Gillespie and Morajon. Kolek's got to be on your team all year because you picked him up in the Rule 5 draft unless you send him back to Seattle. You got Luis Patino. You got a lot of arms. You add Kenley to that. Add Kenley to the bullpen. With Suarez, with Peralta, with Go, with Matsui. You could trade some of those younger prospects. You could trade some of those younger arms. Maybe you flip one of those arms that you got back from New York. And you go get a young starting pitcher. Or you go get another outfielder. You can get an everyday major league outfielder for some of these guys. A guy like Vasquez, a guy like Drew Thorpe. I don't want to see them go, but you could potentially try to start moving some pieces around. The thing with me with the Jansen deal is I don't think Padres being interested in Kenley Jansen means they really want Kenley Jansen as part of their bullpen. I think it means they're willing to make a trade and they're going to load up on an asset that is affordable. Here's the thing. The most affordable asset to anybody on their team is bullpen pieces because they cost the least amount of money, aside from closers. Kenley Jansen could be your closer. Move everybody up a spot. I'm not against it. I don't mind it. But that being said, it sounds like the asking price for Jarren Duran is very high. So I don't know what that means. I mean, he's got a lot of years of control. He is 27 years old, a little up there in age. I don't necessarily know if I'm trading Jackson Merrill for him. Because I'd rather have the 20-year-old with years of control than the 27-year-old with years of control. And I know he's played in the major leagues. But I think Jackson Merrill being part of the organization in the next 5 years is better than Jarren Duran being a part of the organization for the next 5 years. You're trying to save money here. The way you save money is by having guys like Jackson Merrill on the team. Not guys like Jarren Duran about to go through arbitration. The guys that haven't been through it. Those first 3 years before they're arbitration eligible. That is better. I would give up some pitching for him, though. Some bullpen pitching. Maybe some of the young guys the Red Sox might be interested in. If you get Kenley in return, as well as Jarren Duran. Bullpen's legit with Suarez, Go, Matsui, Peralta, Kenley. That makes it even more badass than it already is. That's your biggest asset right now if you're the San Diego Padres. Their bullpen. Their bullpen's legit. It's pretty good. You got a lot of dudes that throw sliders and hard fastballs and guys that people don't want to face late in games. I mean, the Padres bullpen is like a vintage bullpen right now that you've seen out of the San Diego Padres. You get to the sixth inning with a lead, ball game. Padres win. Start ringing the bell. Get the fryer over there, start ringing the bell. Which might be the only way for this team to be able to compete in 2024, which is fine. I talked about it last week on the show. I think the Padres' future is good. I really do. It depends. Now, it depends on the money. From what I've been told, it sounds like they're going to go back to business as usual for the Padres in 2025. I could buy that. We'll see what happens. But you still got to be able to compete in 2024 if you want to continue to tell your fans that this is a year that you're not punting on. They got enough stars that they could get the job done, but they do need to get some outfield help. I think the wheels are turning for A.J. Preller. Here's the other thing. Scott Boras has everybody on hold right now. A lot of these big candidates need to go off the board before you can start making moves. You got to start seeing actually how these rosters start forming, who starts making teams, and who needs what. Then you can start making some serious deals. And we've seen A.J. Preller make a lot of deals in spring training. You got Erie Fan Geek. First of all, my name's spelled Braden, not with a Y. Duran has 5 years of control and is a proven center fielder. The asking price is going to be for someone like Jackson Merrill or get out of town if I was Boston. Well, the thing with Jackson Merrill is he fits everything that you need him to do for the organization in the next 5 to 10 years. You have to keep some of those guys part of your organization. I agree with the prospect thing. It's no guarantee that he's going to be good. I mean, Jarren Duran's a solid outfielder, but again, he's up there in age. You have to view it as who makes your team better in the next 5 years, Jarren Duran or Jackson Merrill? I think it might be Jackson Merrill. In the next 5 years, it might be Jackson Merrill. You know, Jarren Duran's my age, 27 years old. I'm 28, whatever, same thing. 295, 2.1 overall WAR. You know, not a high home run guy. It was a 121 OPS plus last year, 332 at bats, 98 hits. He's played a couple of seasons already in the major leagues. Good, solid player. 258 batting average career, 729 OPS. He's got a career OPS plus of 96. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to trade Jackson Merrill for a guy whose OPS plus is 96. The sample size's still small. I mean, the guy's only played 193 ball games in his career. for Jarren Duran. And what I'm saying is he's already 27 years old. Are you trading for another Jake Cronenworth? It's possible. You never know. Jarren Duran hit 215 his first year, 221 his second year, and had a big year last year in 102 games. In 362 plate appearances. I mean, it's still relatively a small sample size for this guy. Jarren Duran is definitely going to be better for the Padres in the next 2 years, but can he consistently do that through his 30s? I don't know. That's a tough one to me. I don't want to trade Merrill either. I think in the next 5 years, Jackson Merrill probably does more for you than Jarren Duran, if that happens to be what the asking price is. I was told from the situation that the asking price for Jarren Duran is ridiculous. But I'm sure A.J. Preller is going to keep kicking the tires on it because it would be a good upgrade for the outfield. I mean, anything right now in the outfield is better than what you currently have, which is just Fernando trying to play all three spots. So I'll take Jackson Merrill in the future. I don't want to put him in the outfield, though. Absolutely not. Do not want to put him in the outfield. The Jarren Duran conversation is intriguing. Hyun-Jin Ryu, I know we talked about that a little bit yesterday on Annie and Elston, but Hyun-Jin Ryu, to me, is not worth what you'd have to pay to bring him in. I mean, he's going to want like $10 million plus. I don't want Hyun-Jin Ryu for $10 million plus. I know you need more arms, but if I only have like $18 million to spend, $10 million of it isn't going to Hyun-Jin Ryu. Unless that price goes down because he can't find any other home. I'm not doing it. Absolutely not. I'm reading the comments here. Yeah, Ryu's going back to Korea. I think that's probably legit. He's probably going back to Korea. I do agree with that. And here's the deal. Like in the chat on YouTube, if you want to weigh in again, follow us on YouTube. I agree with Erie Fan Geek on a sense that, yeah, the guy hadn't played a lot yet, but you do need. I mean, the Padres' biggest problem has been trading away all their prospect capital all the time. They got to keep somebody. And Jackson Merrill, as of right now, seems to be that somebody. And I'm not convinced that Jarren Duran can have the season that he had last year each and every year. I mean, last year was a great season for him. He hit 295. But the 2 seasons before, again, he didn't play a lot of games. He hit under 230. His OPS plus wasn't very high. His career OPS plus is below an average Major League Baseball player. Maybe you think you could strike gold with him as a 27-year-old and a 28-year-old. And maybe a 29-year-old, or maybe you're getting Jake Cronenworth. I mean, is he going to fall off? We don't know. I mean, I don't think there's enough to part ways with a guy that's expected to have a high value and be better than that. I think it's an interesting conversation. Johnny has a good comment. My fear is Duran will be Grish with his bat. I can see that happening too. I mean, that's the risk you take, but you're in a position where you got to start taking some risks if you want to be able to compete in 2024. I don't think Hyun-Jin Ryu is in the cards for the Padres. I think Duran's asking price right now might be a little bit too high. I'm interested in potentially acquiring Kenley Jansen because I think the Padres have enough bullpen help where if they do make that move, it means they're making a bigger move to ship off some of those players in their bullpen for other positions. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with this Padres team and what they do. And I think there's this trade coming up A.J. Preller's sleeve. I do want to talk more about what Rob Manfred said yesterday and some of the comments he made, which I thought were just ridiculous and out of line and very on par for Rob Manfred and the continuous jabs that he always throws the San Diego Padres way. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We're also going to dive into the Super Bowl. I got a full Super Bowl preview for you. So if you need some last-minute information before you place your bets, before you do your squares, I will have it covered for you. Coming up, this is Braden Surprenant. This is the Braden Surprenant Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Listen to
Uh-oh. Gotta fix the camera here. It's not following me as much. Braden Surprenant Show live on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Thanks again for all of you for joining us and making us a part of your day. As we were talking some Padres baseball on the weekend, talking a little Aztec basketball last night as well. Tough loss to the Nevada Wolfpack, and they'll be back coming up this week. Big week for the Aztecs at home against Colorado State, and then again against New Mexico, both at Viejas Arena. I want to dive into what, some of the things Rob Manfred said, but again, there's a couple good comments in there in the chat. There's a couple things in there that I thought were pretty good. Phil had a good one too. I'd rather roll the dice on Merrill and Marcy, and if another outfielder is needed, then make a trade. Still feel that Profar or Pham would be a smart free agent signing. I do agree with the second part of that. I do think that signing Profar for almost nothing and getting Pham back wouldn't be the worst possible outcome. If you do both of those things, then Fernando definitely has to play center field. You do need a center fielder. You do need somebody in the outfield to play center field if you're not going to have Fernando go out there. And I know a lot of people think it's a bad idea to put Fernando out there. I think he's your best athlete, so he should be out there eventually. But spring training should be the time for him to get him right in center field. Rob Manfred made some jabs at the San Diego Padres earlier this week. It was in an article in The Athletic. Talked about, in the December of 2022, this is in the article, in the middle of an offseason dominated by big spending from the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres, Commissioner Rob Manfred didn't seem enthused by the dollars flying around. I think everybody in this room understands that we have a level of revenue disparity in this sport, and it makes it impossible for some of our markets to compete at some of the numbers we've seen. Manfred said at the winter meetings that year, and that's not a positive. It's like everything else in life. There's good and bad in it. In the end, of course, neither the Mets nor the Padres made the 2023 postseason. This go-around after an offseason dominated by the spending of a different club, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Manfred was more reserved, with the memory of the Mets and Padres finishes still on his mind. We always watch trends in the market. I think a concern for baseball has always been, since I started in 1988, disparity on the revenue and the payroll side, Manfred said Thursday. Having said that, last year we were talking about a different team eating up players, or two teams, right? And unless my recollection was bad, neither of them were at the little event we hold in October and nearly November. I don't know why, as a commissioner, right, why Rob Manfred wants to continue to be a guy that takes shots at organizations in his league. Doesn't really make any sense to me. I don't see anybody else doing that. That's a commissioner. You don't see Roger Goodell just taking shots at organizations for trying to win. The spend money thing in baseball is hilarious to me, by the way. They all have money. They all have enormous amounts of money. And the small market organizations can be spending almost as much as the Padres. They just lie and say they can't because they don't want to. As much as we've talked about it before in the past, right? As much as we've talked about it in the past, when you start talking about these organizations not spending money, we're a small market team, we can't spend any money. Peter Seidler and company proved that you can do it. There's a difference between some owners that want to win and some owners that treat this like a business. And I do think you need to treat some of it as a business. You don't want to just destroy the organization. But overall, organizations that are run by owners who treat their team like it's their toy are teams that win. I'm going to rephrase that and say it again. Owners that treat their team like it's their toy are teams that usually win because they made their money doing something else. It's not their main source of income. owning the organization isn't their only asset, where they won't get paid until they sell the team to make it a liquid asset. Let's think about some of these organizations, right? And not all of them are billionaires. A lot of them are, but not all of them are. They won't become billionaires until they sell some of the teams. I mean, some of the ownership groups and the family groups that got into this a long time ago, where they bought it for something really cheap, and they may be worth $1 billion now or $2 billion now because the organization's worth that. That's not liquid assets. So like the Spanos family, for example. If I had my drop board, I know we'd be booing. But the Spanos family, like, the team's worth what, like $2.5 billion now or whatever it is in Los Angeles, even though everybody's team in the NFL has skyrocketed in value. One of the best return on your investments ever. The Spanos family doesn't have that money. It's not a liquid asset. They can't just like take that money and spend it on it. Their team is worth that, but they don't get that till they sell it. Which I find very interesting too with this John Harbaugh hire. They don't spend any money, but they're gonna. To me, I think this is their last ditch effort for the family. They're putting all their eggs in the Harbaugh basket, which is fine. It's a good hire. And then if it doesn't work out, they'll sell the team. They'll make their money, but they're gonna have to pay a ton back in capital gains taxes until their accountant gets them out of some of it. But they don't have liquid assets. It's the same with the A's, right? They don't have any money. They don't have any money. They actually are poverty because all that money of the team's ownership is just for them to sell a team. And the guy's cheap, and that's his main source of income. And that's why a lot of these small market teams do well in small markets. They just get people to go to games. They would rather just have people go to games and win. If people are going to games and you're not winning, that's the best formula ever. I said it yesterday about the Rockies. Rockies are the favorite team of Major League Baseball. They find talent. They give it away to the big clubs. People go to their games. Their stadium you don't have to worry about building a new stadium. They make money. They don't have to spend money. It's great. Baseball loves that. They love that. They don't like small market teams being able to spend money. Because Peter Seidler embarrassed everybody else. He went out there and spent money. He did what you want an owner to do, and that is treat the team like it's their toy. Peter Seidler's got all his own money. He made all his own money. He doesn't have to need the team. He doesn't need the team to make money for him. He's got all his own money. He's got his own firm. He made tons of money on his own. Used the team money to spend on the team to make the team better. Guy wants to win. The guy wanted to win. Those are the ownerships that you want. Those are the ownership groups you want. The ones that want to win. You're going to see two of those tomorrow. In Kansas City and San Francisco. You wonder why they're there all the time? They want to win. We're going to give you a full breakdown of Super Bowl 58 when we come back. We're going all in, X's and O's. We'll break down where the keys are, where Brock Purdy has a chance to shine, what Steve Spagnuolo has to do to keep Brock Purdy on the backside, and maybe some little things to look for before you place your bets on the big game. Coming up next, final segment, Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
Let's get it. Hop off a 16 passenger. This a G5. No, this not a challenge.
Braden Surprenant Show live on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. It's time to talk about the Super Bowl. We got a good matchup coming up tomorrow. A great matchup coming up tomorrow. And the Chiefs and the Niners. It's going to be outstanding. It's going to be great. A lot of both offenses very difficult to deal with as a defense. I think the Chiefs' defense is a little bit better than San Francisco's. We're going to get you a full breakdown as we get you ready for Super Bowl Sunday right now on the Braden Surprenant Show live on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Thanks again for all of you for joining us today. Let's dive into it. There's a full breakdown on ESPN.com between their staff writers that they put out. I mean, it goes into enormous detail talking about both teams, how they got there, who their head coaches are, breaking down the quarterbacks, breaking down the scheme, breaking down different things. I want to talk a little bit about what to look for, especially tomorrow for both teams, and just how difficult of a task it is to try to slow both of these teams down. Let's start with the San Francisco 49ers, led by Brock Purdy. We know about Brock Purdy. 262nd and final pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. And he could become the lowest drafted starting quarterback to win a Super Bowl, excluding Kurt Warner, who was not drafted. In his career, including the playoffs, Purdy has a 21-5 record. He is the third youngest starting quarterback in Super Bowl history. Only Dan Marino and Ben Roethlisberger were younger. Here's a couple of things of why Brock Purdy has done so well, and it mostly has to do with kind of the scheme. And I'm not really calling him a system quarterback, but I think a lot of Brock Purdy's success comes from the environment he is in. Yes, I know that sounds like a system quarterback, but this is what I mean. Let's talk about some of the stats as laid out here on ESPN.com. Where Purdy excels is attacking the middle of the field. I'm going to break that down for you from a defensive perspective here in a couple of seconds. A lot of the big plays and the passes for Brock Purdy comes on in the middle of the field. 56% of his passes are between the numbers, third most among QBR qualifying quarterbacks, and 14% are between the hashes, which are the most of any quarterback rated qualifying player. But the efficiency is also there. He ranks first in QBR when throwing between the numbers and second between the hashes. Interesting, only behind Mahomes, who does a great job of doing that as well. And a lot of that has to do with motion and pre-snap motion. We've seen a lot of teams have success doing that. The Dolphins do a great job doing that with Tyreek Hill. But let's talk about the 49ers for a second. And I talked about the weapons a lot of times. I had to draw this out as a defensive coordinator at high school football, which is nowhere near the level that these guys are. I mean, these guys are just insane football players and football coaches. And Spagnuolo is one of the best. So this is what Spagnuolo has to stop. Now, a lot of the time with San Francisco, like one of their they like to compact their formations together. Tight bunch to the left, the wide out on the right side, but everything compact. A couple of receivers on the left, maybe one on the right. McCaffrey in the backfield. They do like some empty sets, but I do want to talk about some of their formations, especially their trips bunch they do. And they do a great job of hiding their players, but getting their players and their playmakers in good opportunities. So let's talk about a tight bunch for a second on the left side. So what you have is you've got Deebo Samuel on the line of scrimmage with Brandon Ayuk to his left and George Kittle to his right. Flexed out on the left side, but not too far from the left tackle. So there it's a tight bunch. You got Christian McCaffrey offset left to Brock Purdy, who's in shotgun, and you got either Ray McLeod on the far side or another receiver on the right. It could be any of their other receivers. So how do you defend that? Well, Kansas City is a high zone defense. They play zone a lot. And Brock Purdy does a really good job against man. He doesn't really have a lot of opportunities against zone, or he doesn't do very well against zone defense But the problem with zone defense is you're limiting yourself in trying to stop a guy like Christian McCaffrey. You kind of have to load the box and man up. But let's say you want to attack it from a zone perspective against that tight bunch. You got to call your strength to the right defensively, so towards the offense's left, because you got to worry about Debo, Ayuk, and George Kittle all on the right side. So you got your nose guard in a 1-tech, you got your end in a 5-tech. Both your linebackers have gap responsibilities. Backside ends in a 3. Backside backer is in a 5. You want to play like a 50 defense, which means over the top, you got to cover 6. You got quarter, half defense in the secondary. You motion George Kittle over. All of a sudden, now you got a bump as a defense if you want to get, again, have to have all the gaps covered if you want to stop Christian McCaffrey. If you're doing a zone, which puts you back into a cover 2. So you got 2 high safeties. You got 2 corners kind of playing in the flat, but they're kind of guys that are going to have to cover deep over the top as well. And you got every gap covered to deal with Christian McCaffrey. Because George Kittle, from that inside slot spot, likes to go over and be a wing on the far side, creating opportunities, creating mismatches for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Now, that being said, I'd say they motion George Kittle over. They got to flex to a cover 2. You got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. Brock Purdy, a lot of these times, will then flip it to an empty set almost where McCaffrey comes back out. So your flat player is your corner, so he's got to deal with McCaffrey going back out to the left where Ayuk and Deebo Samuel is. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk goes deep. Corner's got to worry about McCaffrey. Linebacker potentially has to worry about McCaffrey in the underneath move of Deebo Samuel. So if Ayuk goes deep, safety's got to take Ayuk. Linebacker's got to worry about McCaffrey as well as the cornerback. And in the middle, you got Deebo Samuel. If the safety jumps Deebo, then you got Ayuk over the top. Backside, you got to worry about George Kittle. You also have to worry about a run to the right side. You're outflanked with the extra tight end that's playing a wing. So you have to worry about gap responsibility as well. So now on the backside, you got 2-on-2. If George Kittle decides to run some type of route on the backside, you always have to worry about him blocking. And so you run into a little bit of problems with some of these looks that San Francisco is going to throw at Steve Spagnuolo. Let's say you go to a man coverage. You go to a man coverage, you can bring another dude in the box to worry about Christian McCaffrey, but your linebacker now has McCaffrey one-on-one if he leaks out of the backfield. That's a bad matchup for the Chiefs defense. There's a big reason why Brock Purdy has so much success across the middle. If you want to go zone against Brock Purdy, which he actually hasn't done very well against in comparison to man, you got to worry about your linebackers jumping Christian McCaffrey on any type of run fake and then getting back to potentially get Deebo Samuel back across the middle. If your safety jumps Deebo, then Brandon Ayuk's over the top. Or maybe it's Ray McLeod going down the field. And all of that builds off of Kyle Shanahan's great running offense that is so difficult to stop in general, on top of the fact that they got Christian McCaffrey. So who do you want to stop? The biggest X factor, I think, for this, and I disagree with ESPN, is Deebo Samuel. I don't know what you do with him. I mean, trying to stop him is a difficult task. To try to stop Deebo Samuel. The guy's the best player in the NFL. He doesn't get the recognition. Nobody's got Deebo for what he could do. But you got to worry about him going across the middle. You got to worry about him pushing the top off. You got to worry about him in the running game on any type of jet sweep. You got to worry about Christian McCaffrey and his ability to take on any type of defensive front that you throw at him with the running game that Kyle Shanahan has. You can't put yourself in a situation where you got any defensive lineman playing a 2-gap set. I know they can do it because they're pros, but that's still a very difficult task to do. And so, again, you use the play action. You give the ball to Christian McCaffrey on run plays. Then you hit him with something across the middle on the play action because they start lulling the guys to sleep. You get the linebackers to jump McCaffrey. Safeties over the top, worried about Ayuk. Deebo Samuel across the middle. He's wide open. Brock Purdy does better against man defense than he does against zone. I mean, I probably would imagine Spagnuolo is going to send some zone, but if you have zone coverage, you can't bring as much pressure. If you go man coverage, you can bring more pressure, but the matchups for San Francisco are better against Kansas City's defense in man coverage when you're trying to bring pressure on Brock Purdy, because you got to disrupt Brock Purdy if you want to have an opportunity to win and give yourself an opportunity against Debo and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Juszczyk when he goes in and Brandon Ayuk. And you can't double team these guys either. It's going to keep you susceptible to other things. Let's talk about Kansas City. We know about Patrick Mahomes. His biggest strength, I agree with ESPN, his biggest strength is keeping plays alive with his legs. He's a great passer, absolutely insane passer. But his ability to just fold over himself and just stay up and finding other outlets, he makes a lot of bad throws out of those situations that he usually gets the benefit of the doubt for. But it's a big asset because now your defense has to cover a little bit longer. Kansas City likes doing the same thing with pre-snap motions. That really creates havoc of getting your guys set right, being able to cover the run, have everything stopped on the run, because you got Isaiah Pacheco, who's been dominating in the run game. He's ripping off big runs. So the same thing has to be played when you play defensively against Kansas City. They got weapons too, just their receivers are not as good as San Francisco's, but their tight end's way better. You got to worry about Travis Kelce. Let's think about the same thing in terms of Kansas City's offense towards San Francisco. They like running tight sets too. Either tight bunch on the left, starting in doubles gun, moving to a tight bunch. You have to worry about Isaiah Pacheco. When you're in tight, you almost have to view those guys as extra linemen, which creates extra gaps, which makes you more susceptible to the run. So if you try to overcompensate for the run to try to cover all the gaps, then they hit you with Travis Kelce on a block and go, get you across the middle again. Can't play two high safeties against Kansas City. They do have speed and McCole Hardman to blow the top off. Have the linebackers have to make a decision on Travis Kelce. Something's going to be open. Maybe it is Isaiah Pacheco in the middle. These are two great offenses going against each other. We haven't seen too much out of Kansas City. They've done just enough to win. Baltimore did a pretty good job stopping them once they started figuring out. But the 12 personnel for Kansas City is going to be something that is going to be a problem for San Francisco. 12 personnel is one running back and two tight ends. And they've done a lot of damage in the postseason with their 12 personnel. Throwing another tight end in there with Travis Kelce. Again, with the tight end looks and you're in tight, you create more gaps. Because everybody's, well, why don't you just double team Travis Kelce? I can't double team Travis Kelce and make those players worry about the gaps that Travis Kelce creates when he gets into the run game and the blocking scheme. You can't stop that. Or you make him, as we like to do a Hercules, where he's got to do both. And that is a very difficult task to do. Have gap responsibility while also trying to cover a guy like Travis Kelce. Man, zone, doesn't matter. Pre-snap motions are just, they're deadly right now. They're deadly for a lot of different reasons. So I got to do a little bit of chalk talk there on the Super Bowl. 12 personnel, look for it for Kansas City. They like doing that the most. Both teams like having tight bunch formations, either a trips bunch or having everybody in tight inside the numbers, because it creates problems when you send guys in motion and you can move guys across the middle. You have to make a decision on run or zone. On man or zone. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo versus Brock Purdy is going to be the most interesting thing for me to watch. And how they're going to try to slow down the weapons and try to get to Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy is the weakest link on that Niners offense, but all of the weapons around him make him so deadly in so many different ways. That'll do it for me. I'm Braden Surprenant. You can follow me on social media at @B_SURP. Thanks again for joining us on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Enjoy your Super Bowl parties. We will talk about this later in the week. I'll be back on next Sunday from 8 to 10. They'll be that way the rest of the way. So from all of us here at 97.3 The Fan, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, it's Ben and Woods, and we will get you through this Padres offseason together.
How will they fill the holes on their roster? We'll keep you updated on every move.